parents' recent experiences of maternity services. And that will be followed by an expert discussion and debate about the challenges and opportunities for NHS maternity services. At NCT, we have a long history of campaigning, and we're proud of the positive changes that we have driven over many years through user-led and research-based policy work. This includes early campaigns to enable the presence of a woman's choice of birth companion, through to better birth environments, women's right to breastfeed in public places without discrimination. In 2020, we secured funding for every new mum in England to have a 6-week postnatal check in primary care. And more recently, during the COVID pandemic, we campaigned for changes in legislation and guidance to protect and support pregnant women and new parents at a time of significant isolation and vulnerability. At NCT, we're here to support women and families as they navigate the maternity system. And with maternity and postnatal care in crisis, we know that this work has never been more important. As well as providing holistic, practical and emotional support to parents through our existing range of antenatal and postnatal information, support and services, we are also committed and very busy developing our new 5-year strategy and campaign work to continue this work to create real change. I'm delighted now to hand over to NCT's trustee, Chi Evi-Parker, who will be chairing this part of the event. Chi became a new parent herself in lockdown. She's an advocate for equity and inclusion, and I know that she's passionate about new parent engagement and empowerment, whatever an individual's background or circumstances. Thank you, Chi, for leading this very important event for us today.
Thank you, Angela. And hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us at this important discussion, which I'm delighted to be chairing today. Over the next hour, we'll be talking about the challenges facing NHS maternity services and discussing how we can improve care for all with the right leadership, focus and joint working from the government, NHS and individual trusts. But first, some quick housekeeping. The chat function is enabled on Zoom so that you can all speak directly to each other and network. And I can see it's already out full force, which is fantastic. Questions to the panel will be answered via the Q&A function, which should appear at the bottom of your screen. So please do submit your questions throughout the next hour. You will also be able to see other people's questions and upvote the ones that you think the panel should address. Note that we also have closed captioning enabled on Zoom. You should be able to turn it on and off as required, but please note it is automated, so you have to excuse any typos. Before I hand over to NCT's research and policy team to give an overview of our parents' recent experiences of maternity services, I want to let you know that the findings we are about to share will be hard listening, and especially for those of you who may be pregnant, using NHS services, trying for a baby, or indeed if you support parents in your work or volunteer roles. Our research tells a story of poor quality care, baby loss, and other challenging themes. Therefore, from 10:15 this morning, a group of skilled NCT practitioners will be holding a space for anyone who feels distressed as a result of hearing the findings of the research. They are there to listen to your concerns and allow you to express whatever feelings you have, and will also make suggestions of where you could go for further support. This space is being held in a separate Zoom account, and you will find details of how to join in the chat function now. Now I'm pleased to introduce Jennifer Holly, NCT's Research Manager, and Elizabeth Duff, NCT's Senior Policy Advisor, to take you through NCT's findings.
NCT has supported parents through their maternity care for over 65 years. There have been many improvements in maternity services during this time, but in recent years, we, like many others, have become increasingly concerned about the quality and safety of maternity care in the UK. The Care Quality Commission's most recent report showed that only 1% of maternity services in England are rated outstanding, that 37% require improvement, and 4 are inadequate. This year's report from Embrace on maternal deaths shows that the number of women dying each year during or shortly after pregnancy is going up. Disparities in outcomes persist, with Black women being 3.7 times more likely and Asian women being 1.8 times more likely to die during the perinatal period. This year has also seen the publication of the independent inquiries into maternity services in the Shrewsbury and Telford Trust and in East Kent, which have highlighted many systemic challenges facing maternity services across the UK. Staffing shortages are at the heart of these challenges. The Royal College of Midwives says there is a shortfall of 2,000 midwives. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has called for 500 more obstetricians. Against this backdrop, in July 2022, the all-party parliamentary groups on maternity and on baby loss, the latter chaired by Jeremy Hunt MP, announced a call for evidence about safe maternity staffing. As the UK's leading charity for parents, we saw the importance of this issue for the families we support. And so we chose to run an online survey to find out more about what giving birth is like in today's maternity system. Over 1,250 people who'd given birth in the previous 12 months responded, and this is what they told us.
We found that half of women experienced a red flag event during their maternity care, and 3 in 10 had 4 or more such experiences. NICE guidance on maternity staffing describes red flag events as indicators that midwifery staffing levels are inadequate. These events, like those described on the screen here by 2 women, include delays in pain relief or medication, delays in spotting or acting on signs of potential illness or complications, and delays in being triaged on getting to hospital in labour. Good quality maternity care is just as much about how care is delivered as what care is provided. For parents, how they are treated through their maternity journey can be critical to their longer-term well-being. We found that women who were treated with kindness were less likely to perceive their birth as complicated, even when it involved multiple unplanned interventions that could be viewed as traumatic and have a long-term impact on their mental health. Positively, many women spoke about the outstanding care they received, particularly from midwives, as described here by one woman. At the same time, however, almost a fifth of women were typically not treated with kindness, compassion, and respect by the professionals they had contact with throughout their maternity journey. Women's experiences range from unkind treatment to the devastating disrespect that one woman described here. Importantly, we know from research published this year by 5 Times More, Birthrights and Muslim Women's Network that poor quality care is more likely to be experienced by women who are marginalised and discriminated against because of their ethnicity, race or religion. The level of personalised care that parents received was measured by asking if they were listened to or treated as an individual by maternity staff. 65% of women told us they felt listened to by healthcare professionals all or most of the time during their maternity journey. Most women also reported feeling they were treated as an individual by the healthcare professionals they saw. Again, however, the many instances where women were not listened to had devastating consequences, as those described here. In relation to continuity of care, since our survey was run in the summer, the national targets for implementing continuity models of care have been removed due to concerns that there is insufficient staffing to withstand restructuring and to safely deliver the desired model. Evidence from the women we heard from, however, suggested that while some women gained an important sense of continuity by seeing the same midwife or obstetrician at every appointment, which allows a trusting relationship to be built, they also valued a broader model of continuity of care between professionals, particularly those who work in different teams. Such a model relies on strong teamwork and excellent communication between professionals so that care appears seamless throughout the maternity journey. Enabling and supporting informed decision-making is a key component to safe and equitable maternity care. However, we found that only half of women always felt that they had the time, information, and support to make the decision that was right for them and their family. Many women also spoke about decision-making being taken out of their hands, as highlighted in these quotes here. On average, just 44% of women said they were able to see a healthcare professional in a timely fashion. This was most acute in the postnatal period, where up to 79% of women talked about difficulties in speaking to or getting the attention of a midwife. Delays in care were wide-ranging, as described by the quotes here, but most frequently mentioned were routine antenatal appointments running hours late or being postponed, waiting hours or sometimes days for induction to be started or progressed, delays in access to pain relief during labour, delayed responses to calls for assistance during labour, birth, and particularly postnatally, and being turned away from local hospitals whilst in active labour as there was insufficient capacity. As already noted, some care was worse in the postnatal period, and the crisis in postnatal care was really laid bare by the women who completed our survey. They described their care as they received as carnage, hell, and total chaos, and spoke about feeling unsupported, abandoned, and frequently unsafe. Just 25% of women reported always feeling supported by midwives after giving birth. 23% of women said the same about obstetricians. As highlighted by this quote, however, it must be said that women recognised staff were doing their best in very difficult working conditions.
There is no simple solution to the challenges facing today's maternity services. From what parents told us, we have derived 8 recommendations. Number 1, invest in, recruit into, and retain staff in the workforce right across the maternity system. Number 2, promote relationship-based care that is based around treating all patients with kindness and respect. Number 3, listen to women. This is where true transformation of maternity services begins. Number 4 is be inclusive. This can range from considering language that is inclusive of all parents to fully implementing a personalised care approach. Number 5, support seamless multidisciplinary teamwork and enhanced communication within and between teams. Number 6, reduce variation in practice around induction. Currently, women are experiencing very worrying delays in both the initiation and progress of induction. Number 7, enable partners' presence at in-hospital postnatal care so that new mothers, especially those post-caesarean, are never left without food and water or access to a bathroom or help to lift and feed their baby. And number 8, we want to bring together a coalition of service users, professionals and policymakers to conduct an end-to-end review of postnatal care up to at least 6 weeks after the birth.
Our findings will be tough listening for both parents and those working in maternity services. Whilst many women spoke very highly about the individual healthcare practitioners that they had contact with during pregnancy, birth and postnatally, their words also described a service in disarray. Most evident was the impact of insufficient staffing, which is resulting in long delays in care, in limited time for truly informed and shared decision-making, and poor practice, which reflects the low morale and burnout among the workforce. This results in women feeling frightened, anxious, and unsafe. The solutions to the challenges facing NHS caregivers are systemic, rather than resting on the shoulders of individual healthcare professionals. NCT remains committed to working closely with our many partners in the maternity sector to advocate and call for greater support from government to bring about the change that parents and professionals alike so desperately need. We will use the findings from this research in our policy and influencing work and in future campaigns.
Thank you, Jennifer and Elizabeth, for that powerful summary and for outlining NCT's recommendations for change. Before I go to the speakers, there's just one quick question that's come into the Q&A, which is asking whether the survey was published and where, if so, where our community could go to access it.
Would you like me to respond to?
Yes, please.
It's just being finalised at the moment, just sort of in terms of design and making sure it's peer reviewed really well by some of our partners in the sector. We will let everyone know in the next couple of weeks once it's made public.
Perfect, thanks, Jo. Now I'd like to introduce the speakers who will be joining our panel this morning, and it's really exciting to have them here. First of all, we have Abbie Aplin. Abbie is Director Maternity Reform for Royal College of Midwives. Abbie is a passionate midwife who spent her midwifery career of 35 years developing the care of women, supporting midwives and maternity support workers in practice, and leading change to ensure the high quality, safe care of women and families. Abbie is leading on the RCM response to the independent inquiries into maternity services, supporting members and influencing on their behalf. Her role also links across the RCM and the RCOG, supporting the Independent Maternity Working Group. Welcome, Abbie. Next, we have Sandra Igwe. Sandra is the founder of the Motherhood Group, a social enterprise that supports the Black maternal experience by delivering community-based events, training workshops, peer-to-peer support, national campaigns, and culturally sensitive programs for Black mothers. She works to bridge the gap between the community of Black mothers and service providers, policymakers, and organisations. She was also co-chair of Birthrights National Inquiry into Racial Injustice in Maternity Care. Welcome, Sandra. Next, we have Jennifer Holly, who you've already heard from, Research and Policy from NCT. Jennifer is the Research Manager at NCT. Her career has focused on generating insights into the role of varying organisations, charities, the NHS, government bodies, and private companies who can do their best to support families from pregnancy through to more challenging life experiences such as parental mental health problems and homelessness. Alongside her role at NCT, she is a PhD student in the Department of Health Services and Population at King's College London, and is also a member of the Social Research Association and British Psychological Society. And finally, we have Francesca Treadway. Francesca is the Policy and Engagement Director at Birthrights, the UK charity for human rights in pregnancy and childbirth, and leads in the charity's policy, public affairs, and wider engagement programs. While her background is in the music industry, recently leading on external affairs at the Independent Society of Musicians, her experience of giving birth to her first child in the first lockdown drove her to pursue a new life in the maternity sector. In addition, Francesca is the current chair at her local MVP and has also been a service user representative on the Ockendon Review and the London Perinatal Board. She's passionate about ensuring all women and birthing people have access to safe, personalised and rights-based maternity care. A huge welcome to all of you this morning. Thank you for joining us for this very important conversation. It's wonderful to have you all here. If you don't mind, I'd now like to start by hearing your initial immediate reflections and reactions on what we have just heard. So if I go first to Abbie, it would be great to hear your immediate thoughts from the perspective of a midwife.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on the panel today. I'm delighted to be here. Obviously, in listening to the statistics within your survey, are obviously really distressing. You know, from midwives, you know, for a long time, it's always sad to hear the negative stories. But you know, thank you for acknowledging that there is, you know, good care happening in lots of parts of the country as well, which I think is important to remember. You know, and I think that's important for women to hear as well. Obviously, going forward, we were delighted that this would form part of the APPG report that came out into maternity and baby loss, which was, you know, really powerful as well. And I think it serves to really reflect what midwives are saying as well. You know, what's highlighted in the statistics there. Our members tell us every day, you know, that they're sad at the way maternity services, they can't give the care they want to give. They are worried about safety too. And sadly, that's why there is a lot of midwives leaving. So yes, I think we all need to be listening to each other really strongly and hearing the voice, and really just moving forward to take this opportunity to improve the working relationships. I know that we've had that across, organisations such as yourselves, but we need to strengthen that going forward and make sure that we can have a meaningful change for women and families, and actually for our members as well, who are very distressed too.
Thank you, Abbie, and I look forward to speaking more around what those changes could be and how we could make those happen. Next, Sandra, tell us how this research resonates with you, first of all being a parent and specifically being a Black mother.
Thank you guys for having me this morning. It's a real honour to be here, and just my initial thoughts as well on hearing the findings is that it definitely echoes all of the experiences, majority of the experiences that I have personally heard, not just through my advocacy work and through running the organisation, the Motherhood group, but also through the Birthrights inquiry and other commission projects that we've taken under last year and the year before. Ultimately, it's quite painful to still hear that the core themes of not being listened to, not having concerns being escalated, not allowing Black and brown women to be decision makers in their care is still one of the core reasons as to why there is such poor quality care, and of course mostly experienced by Black and ethnic minority mothers and birthing people. And I think the notion of not being listened to, but also lack of kindness, lack of compassion, lack of choice, all of these lacks that we've listed shows that there needs to be more proactive work to ensure that we're not just slipping through the net, but we're having wonderful quality care, not just adequate care, but brilliant quality care. And that should be the goal, not to just take part in the bare minimum, but have quality care so that we can look forward to giving birth, and our children's children can also look forward to giving birth. That's just my initial thoughts, but thank you again.
Thank you, Sandra. And it's interesting just what you said around, not just adequate, brilliant care. And one of the things that I took away when I looked at those stats was what does good look like, and what should those numbers be? Should it be okay that 90% of women have a positive experience, or should we be aiming for 100? So really, really interesting. And finally, Francesca, how does the research make you feel from a human rights perspective?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. First off, this time 3 years ago, I was booking my own NCT course, and now to be speaking at the AGM is quite a moment for me. I think what concerns me from a human rights perspective are those nice red flag events. So the fact that a third of the respondents experience 4+ nice red flag events gives definite cause for concern. These from memory, these red flags include, not getting timely pain relief, being left waiting for stitches, being unwashed after birth, and, delays in spotting and acting on signs of serious health conditions. And all of these are basic breaches of human rights care. And just to echo what Sandra said around this theme of not feeling like you're being listened to or being treated with dignity and respect and compassion, these are generally quite easy things that to be solved, in a sense that don't need extra investment or a workforce plan. And I think we'll be getting into that a little bit later in the discussion, but those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Francesca. So I'm going to throw out some questions, and some of them I might ask some of you directly, but others I'll open up to the full panel. Failure to listen to women has been a recurring theme, and it's something that has come up again just in your initial reflections. It's been the recurring theme in both Ockenden and also the Kirkup reports. What does the panel think needs to change to ensure women's voices and experiences are taken seriously and acted upon? And also, what can women do if they do not feel that they are being listened to? Perhaps Francesca or Sandra, one of you want to pick up on that one first?
I can start with that. So, listening, this theme of listening to someone is treating them with dignity and respect. Again, that's basic human rights element. And both dignity and respect are fundamental and essential components of safe care. And caregivers who listen to women and birthing people and provide them with accurate information and respect their choices make a fundamental contribution to a safe maternity service. I think what do I need things to change? What change to change women's to make sure women's voices and experiences are taken seriously and acted upon? Well, it's putting human rights back at the centre of care. It's making sure. I know we're going to be speaking a lot about relationship-based care shortly, but I think that is absolutely essential. A relationship-based care model is absolutely essential to personalised care, and it will allow personalised care to thrive. And it means that women and birthing people will be put back at the centre of their care. They will have choice and control over the care that their care is planned and delivered and is based on what matters to them. I think at the moment it's clear from the various reports that have come out and from this one that this is just not a priority. And I think it's quite an easy putting those human rights principles back into the heart of maternity care, or making sure it's at the beginning of any education routes, is key to making sure that women and birthing people are feeling heard.
Thank you, Francesca. Sandra, please.
Sorry. And just to echo what Francesca said, absolutely, I do think that human rights should be a fundamental aspect of maternity care here in the UK. Clearly, there hasn't been an urgent need to place human rights, the rights to dignity, autonomy, choice. That hasn't been part of maternity care, and that's something that I've personally experienced, not feeling like I've had choice over how and where I gave birth, and not really feeling that my words were taken seriously, and also feeling like the white body was, is the norm in maternity care, and feeling like, okay, I am othered, I feel dehumanized, and that has been an ongoing theme across several reports. The notion that, as a Black mother, I might have, a stronger or a higher pain threshold, and therefore being denied pain relief personally, and hearing those experiences echoed throughout, other reports and inquiries, that's very disheartening. Why are we walking or using or having certain stereotypes, misconceptions, preconceptions, and taking that into the maternity space? That shouldn't be allowed. And so I think also, as well as human rights being at the forefront, committing to being an anti-racist organisation should be embedded throughout. And what does anti-racist look like? It means, not using the white body as the norm. It also means understanding, trying to understand everyone's cultural backgrounds, their traditions, their faith. They're using the language that they understand, not coercing mothers and birthing people to make certain medical interventions, explaining over and over again, and forming those relationships, trying to understand. And as I mentioned before, it's bare minimum trying to provide adequate care. It needs to be brilliant quality, high-class care. And that means going through a national policy change. That means, again, committing to be an anti-racist organisation. And that also means allowing those from Black and brown backgrounds to have senior positions, so that we can also be decision makers in our care, not just as a mother or a birthing person, but also as an employee. That needs to be implemented.
Thank you, Sandra. And I think you both talk a lot about what needs to happen in the wider organisation and these fundamental changes. Drawing it back to the individual mother, the pregnant woman, the mother in the midst of labour, having listened to the findings of NCT, what support would you signpost for those who are trying for a baby, who are currently pregnant, or who are about to give birth? If they're not getting what they need, where can they go? What can they do to take ownership, I guess, back of the situation? And I'm going to go to Abbie first, and I think Francesca, you might want to jump in after.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, I'm going to direct them to their midwives. That's the first port of call, that we want them to do that, because obviously they are the experts, and we want them to be, having those conversations, to have those long conversations about choice and personalisation, and feeling that they have the chance to express any concerns and be listened to. What we're not able to provide at the moment is that time, and that's not acceptable. So we need to find ways to make that better, and that's obviously more staff, in the right place at the right time. If women aren't able to or feel that their care is of poor standard, obviously there's ways within services to escalate that. But then also, with the MVPs, working together, they can also act as advocates for them as well. We want people to be able to speak up. We don't want people worried at home. And then, a lot of the services are still able to provide that high standard of care, but we want that standard everywhere. And as those speakers have said, that is the priority to move forward to get that standard for everybody.
Thank you, Abbie. Jessica, did you want to join?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not wanting to repeat what Abbie said, because I totally agree with some of the points that she's made about building in that space and time with your midwife, and speaking to your midwife first and foremost of any concerns that you have. I mean, at Birthrights, we have an advice email service, and we help about roughly 1,200 women and birthing people and healthcare professionals and other birth workers a year at the moment through that advice email service. So people can come to us about getting advice on their basic human rights in childbirth. So we have fact sheets as well that cover anything from the right to request to your midwife or doctor or seeing at maternity records, right through to maternal requests, cesareans and choice of place of birth. And also, just to put it in context, we know at the moment that there are challenges within the system, as we've discussed at length here, that are impacting choice. So particularly limits in home birth services and closures in midwife-led units. And that's coming through quite a lot on our advice line at the moment, because of course that means that a lot of women and birthing people aren't able to have or feel that their birth choice is at risk of not being fulfilled. So we are helping many families communicate with their trusts to ensure that they are able to fulfill their birth choices or are supported with reasonable alternatives, and to make sure that all avenues to facilitate choice have been exhausted. So I would recommend coming to Birthrights.
Thank you, Francesca and Abbie. And actually jumping on you mentioned the challenge around services being closed. I doubt anyone on the panel would disagree with our calls to invest in, recruit in and retain staff in the workforce across the maternity services. The question is, how can we get the government to commit to this?
Shall I come in there as well?
Please do.
I don't really think I've got the complete answer, but obviously, we want to keep those conversations going and make sure that reports like yours and all the surveys that have come out and all the evidence that's come out, which is reporting poor standards, are heard at those levels. And obviously, the RCM is completely behind that, influencing and supporting at that level with MPs and Secretary of State when we can get to see them, whoever it might be the next time. So that's really important that we can get those conversations going. But if we don't have the investment in the services, and it's not just about numbers of midwives. Yes, we know that there's 2,000 short at the moment, and we've lost 500 over the last year off the register, which is shocking. We need to be building on the time to have training, to work together, to train together, to make sure that those lessons can be learned from all the things we do. So all of that investment, it's not about just replacing bodies, it's about having time to do things as well. But obviously we need those bodies to backfill, people to have time to do training. So the government need to understand all those intricacies within services, and that's really important. And we'll be having those conversations continuing. We're always lobbying to MPs, and we're working with other stakeholders as well to have those conversations. And the independent working group that was set up in the light of Ockenden, it's very much about having that advice and guidance back to the NHS, who are obviously with the Department of Health as well. So there are other channels that we're channeling those really important things that need to happen, which comes down to investment, but it comes down to workforce planning as well and doing things differently in services. So we need the government to be hearing all of that and understanding the intricacies of that. I think if you hear the MPs talk at the moment, there's a lot more talking about maternity services and the state of maternity services, and I think that's good. I think that's a lot of pressure that's coming onto them as well to hear their constituents and women's voices. So I think that's positive, but there's lots more work to be done.
Thanks, Abbie. And that actually leads me on to a reflection and the question I was going to ask. The news that we hear today, the sad news that we hear today, won't be new news to you on the panel. You spend your days championing change and trying to make these small and bigger changes across the maternity services. You mentioned the government and the fact that some of these conversations are starting to happen. My question is, do you think the UK government is ready for change right now? Because these are not new stories. And if not, what catalyst, if any, do you think is needed to really accelerate to drive that change? And that's to anyone.
I mean, it's quite a difficult question, Chi, I must admit, because it really does feel at this stage that there cannot be any more to be added to the body of evidence for the government to act. I mean, it's really, we've had, statements from I can never say his name, Sajid Javid, about Ockenden. He committed the findings to the House. We've had a response to East Kent. Of course, we had better births at Morecambe Bay, a good few years ago. There's so, we're also talking about other reports that have gone back even further. And at this stage, it feels that we really just need to move away from statements committed to the House and actually see some action. There are various recommendations put out by the Health and Social Care Committee, the uplift in investment. That is something that came out last year. That number you spoke of, Abbie, that 2,000 midwife shortage, as we know, that's out of date now. It's now more than that. It feels really we're at a bit of a turning point, and I think we need to start seeing some action. Quite honestly, I really wouldn't want to see any more evidence being added to the pile. Quite honestly.
Yeah. Can I just come back? I think completely agree. That is, we don't want to see another report, but sadly that there is other reports to come. But the evidence is clear. There does need to be that meaningful change now, and I think it needs to be whatever comes out of the back of Ockenden and those implementation of her immediate actions, and obviously Kirkup's recommendations. They need to be sustainable in services, and people, want to do that. But they need all of those people in place to implement those in services, and we need to invest in our leadership within services as well, to help that through. And that that's the on the ground. But the government absolutely need to be listening. And you would hope that, obviously, given that Jeremy Hunt was part of the Health and Social Care Committee, we gave evidence to that committee and he agreed to that funding. It'd be nice to see that comes through now, but we're yet to see.
Thank you both, and perhaps that is it. Perhaps there has just been one too many reports published, and it has reached that critical mass, and we all hope so. A question for the panel, which has been answered to a degree, but Sandra, you might want to add to your previous answer. So we know that there's, from the research published this year, from 5 Times More, from Birthrights, and from the Muslims Women's Network, that poor quality of care is more likely to experience by women who are marginalised because of ethnicity, race, or religion. How can we put an end to these persistent inequalities in the quality of care that so many women face? And also, as a Black pregnant woman or a Black new mother, are there any particular services that you would recommend them to go to for further support?
Thank you, Chi. Yeah, I did touch on this, but I'm happy to just finalise some more points. Obviously, using the Birthrights inquiry as a call to action as well. So number one, committing to being a racist, anti-racist organisation, dismantling structural barriers and racial equity through national policy change, as well as decolonising maternity curriculums and guidance, but also listening to Black and brown mothers and birthing people, and allowing us to be decision makers in our care, and also taking our concerns extremely seriously. And I heard throughout this report, mothers coming in being turned away, lack of kindness, lack of compassion, and these are soft skills that we can all implement in our day-to-day lives, not just in maternity care. And it doesn't take, if any, funding to do that. So if we all just shift our mindset to treating every single mother, birthing person as an individual, like you would treat a family member or a friend, somebody that you had genuine care for. And I think if we just start to look at the birthing people, mothers, as individuals, not as a robotic person on a machine and coming in and out of an automated system. And we need to start using human rights again as a core principle of taking care of and providing quality care to mothers. And the last question, in terms of support, the Motherhood Group, we run workshops and events, and we also signpost to doulas and counsellors from Black mothers who are struggling with their mental health or trauma after giving birth up to 2 years. So that's one. And of course, just reaching out to plenty of other Black-led organisations that support mothers and engage with mothers from our community on a day-to-day basis. Mummy's Day Out, Motivational Mums, global Black maternity care. There's so many out there, but they're just not being really given a platform or been adequately funded so that they can provide to more services to more mothers. And so there needs to also be a conversation around why organizations that are supporting those who are highly disadvantaged, why there aren't funding going towards those organizations as well. But that's a separate conversation that I won't put into today. But yeah, thank you again.
Thank you, Sandra, and that's really helpful and some really practical organisations to signpost towards. Jen, a question for you, going back to the research, and so then we're going to move into Q&A because we're having quite a few questions coming through on the Q&A, which is great. Do you feel that the research focused more on the experience of first-time parents, and was that a data point that you captured? And if so, did you get a sense of how that experience might differ, if it does differ for subsequent births?
So it was largely split between first-time parents and those who had given birth before. Overall, there was a sense that people who had given birth before were more likely to, one, not be given as much information as first-time parents. There's a real divide between first-time parents being overwhelmed with the information they're given that then doesn't allow them to make decisions. It's just overwhelming. If you had a baby before, you don't get anywhere near as the right amount of information. You're kind of lacking of information. And given that every pregnancy is different, every birth is different, there was a sense that that information was lacking for second-time parents or third-time parents. But at the same time, there was a greater sense that they were able to make the decisions. They had more confidence to make decisions for themselves because they've given birth before. So there was something interesting there. Across the rest of the data, very much similar experiences across the board. Everyone we spoke to, we looked at parents of multiples, we looked at first and subsequent time parents, we looked at parents from different ethnic groups, and across the board, the experiences were really quite similar in the sample that we heard from. Across the board, they were pretty poor, is essentially the primary message, unfortunately.
Thank you, Jen. That's really helpful. Really interesting to have that additional insight. I'm going to move to the Q&A because we have got a number of questions through. So bear with me. We'll get through as many as we can. A lot around midwives. So obviously people are really seeing that resonate. That's really resonating with our audience today. First question. We understand that we need to retain midwives. What might help retain those midwives? What can we do? What can the government do?
Shall I answer that one? I think at the moment, is that right? I think at the moment we need to try everything to retain them. So I think we've done a lot of work about flexible working, conditions at work, about the Caring for You campaign. There's lots of things that we can do. Honestly, they seem quite small things in services, but they are massive to make sure people feel looked after and their health and wellbeing is considered. That's what a lot of people are leaving over, that stress and anxiety, that we need to work more on that in services and give that support. And there are some brilliant examples of that with psychological support coming into services, which I never thought I'd be able to say in my career, that's done, it is required, but that is really important. I think flexible working gives everyone an opportunity, and that's not just about childcare, it's caring opportunities at the end of the older midwives as well. But we need to make sure that the numbers are right, and obviously we are losing people, and sadly you will probably be surprised that I'm going to mention pay, that pay is really important for them as well, because they've got families, so we need to retain them and pay them the right money for the job they do and the responsibility they have. So that's all in the gift of the government to look at that as well. So I think if we're going to get the midwives of tomorrow coming through, we need to have the people that are in the experienced midwives to stay, because they need to look after the students, they need to look after the newly qualified midwives in their preceptorship years. And if we don't retain those experienced midwives, then it's a cascade of exodus, isn't it? And we can't keep going through this. So the retention is really key at the moment, and that's what the NHS England and the government really need to be concentrating on, is keeping those people that we've got, making the conditions better for them. At the end of the day, they come in as a graduate nowadays, and they see their colleagues and friends going into business who are looked after in their education and opportunities. That's all gone at the moment. So we need to get back to really developing them into their jobs and into the really expert midwives that we need of tomorrow, given it's so complex, with so much going on, as Sandra's highlighted as well. All of that work, we need those midwives to be there. but we need to start looking after them and make sure that they feel that they want to make this a future career for them, because we can't have people just coming in for a few years and going, because we never get that experience. And that's what we're losing. The midwives in the first 5 years are going because they feel nervous, they feel scared. There's so much blame out there at the moment. We need to move away from that culture. So I think there's a massive piece of work to do to retain them. But if we all pull together, we could, we've got to see some hope for going forward. That's what, is really key. But we just need to do it together.
Thank you, Abbie. And I'm conscious that we spoke a lot about the antenatal experience, and we haven't touched on the postnatal. And of course, the research came a lot around the negative experience that parents experience in that space. So a number of our community would welcome comments on our ambition to get a full review of postnatal care, given that somebody, Elizabeth has quoted here that 86% of maternal deaths are now postnatal. Are there any thoughts from the panel? Any comments on the postnatal speak pace?
I would just like to reiterate Elizabeth's point. Reading all of the responses and read hundreds and hundreds of experiences of women being so hugely let down postnatally, women having a cesarean birth, holding their baby, having to hold their baby all night because there were not sufficient staff to help pick the baby up, hand it to them to feed and put back. One of the case studies in the report is a woman whose baby fell on the floor because she couldn't move properly because she had a cesarean birth and there was not the staffing there. This is absolutely critical that this is done. I feel it's a really important call for action for everyone across the maternity sector to be doing something about postnatal care particularly, or we are going to continue to see more and more women dying. The majority of postnatal deaths are women taking their own life. We're going to see more and more of this if we don't really act soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. So please, Abbie.
Sorry, Sandra. I would also say that I think the investment needs to go wider than maternity services when we're looking at postnatal care. When you look at the Embrace data, we're talking about women dying up to a year after birth. They're completely awful circumstances and really tragic events. When you read them, I think it's important that message is clear, that this isn't just about the revamp of maternity services. It's about the wider people around the care of women and their families and how we get that better. But that investment needs to be in the perinatal mental health services and the further mental health services, wider than immediately after birth. So I think that's going to be whatever review does come out, or if it does happen, that plan going forward needs to be not just maternity. I think a lot of things that we're talking about at the moment are wider than maternity. It's about the system. We've got to think about the wider system in all of this.
Thank you, Abbie. I was literally going to just echo that 1 in 9 women using the Embrace report are from multiple disadvantages, and actually 40% of maternal related deaths after a year are from mental health issues as well. So when we're looking at maternal mortalities and maternal health postnatally, we have to look at it from a wider perspective, from a wider lens. It's not just taking the mother from her pregnancy and that's it. It's before pregnancy, during her pregnancy, and postnatally, and what support systems that she has in place. Why are we not taking into consideration, mental health as a core aspect of a mother's experience and during her pregnancy and afterwards as well? And Jennifer, you mentioned the care of the mother who dropped her baby. That made me really angry because I just then flashed back to my experience after giving birth and having a traumatic birth and being expected to walk around, and after having my first daughter, epidural, I shouldn't have been able to walk, but I used my strong Black woman superpowers to then walk around because there was nobody that could support me. When I begged and asked for my partner to stay, they said no, he wasn't allowed to stay, but then there was no staff that was able to help me, being called to the front desk, to be given letters without any assistance. All of those incidences can make a mother feel like her care has been extremely below standard and very traumatic, and then could lead to other issues postnatally. So we need to look at personalized care and of course the wider system. Why are we not adding that to adding all of the compounding factors to a mother's care?
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Abbie. jump into the next question, Abbie, this is one that's come for you. Do you see possibilities for NCT's practitioners and peer supporters to play more of a role in maternity service provision going forward, given that they're trained and have excellent listening skills with informed decision making at the heart of their practice?
I mean, I think going forward, we're going to have to think differently about loads of ways of maternity services work and involving others in that care. You know, I think that it's probably going to have to be a change that people accept. You know, historically, there's been support from, you know, NCT and others in services, and that changed over the years. And so maybe going forward, you know, that is something that needs to happen and be invested in. You know, because at the end of the day, we all do want the same thing here. We want healthy women and babies, but we want safe maternity services. So maybe that is something that, you know, going forward will need to be considered and planned in. Thank you, Abbie.
We touched on this before, but perhaps one of you will want to pick this up and give a bit more, give your thoughts on it. Given that many hospitals have had to suspend their services and suspend their sort of care. I'm sorry, I've lost the question. My apologies, there we go. Suspend the services and midwife-led unit because there aren't enough midwives. What should women and parents do when they're live in that situation and they see that their options are being restricted? What can they practically do?
I mean, I can speak to this. So you may have seen or may have not seen recently that we published a blog on our website regarding, you know, the reality of planning a home birth in the current climate, and because we're hearing a lot. Anecdotally, I mean, we're still doing verification, but we heard of over 50 trusts in the UK, you know, having a either restricted or a completely closed home birth service, or, you know, daily reviews of whether they can run their MLU, etc. I mean, in terms, so if we're taking home birth into consideration, I mean, the legal position is that, you know, under Article 8, you can choose where you give birth, and you don't actually have to leave your house. You have a legal right to remain at home. Obviously, because of staffing shortages, we're hearing a lot of, you know, call us on the day and we'll see if we can send someone. The reality is that they have to send someone if you don't want to leave the house. But there are options you can take, so it's a bit more of a like an informed ahead of time decision. So if your trust or your health board says no to your home birth request, I mean, you can challenge the trust or health board, so you can ask what they're doing to support your choice. So if they explored all avenues, you know, to support the right to remain at home, like including, you know, operating on a limited basis or offering bank contracts, you know, you can also contact your local MVP to discuss with them, because part of their role, as I know through my role as MVP chair, is to collect the voices of service users, and in some cases we may have more information about what the situation is with the services, because we've also heard around communication being an issue. I would also recommend considering your other options. So, you know, you might want to change to a neighbouring trust who are still operating a home birth service. You might want to look at going to a local birth centre that, even if it is run by a neighbouring trust or health board, so it could be considered as a home away from a home environment. But basically, with the restrictions, the majority of maternity units will be looking at ways to facilitate choice in a way that is appropriate for what you would like. So it's about opening that dialogue with your trust. And if you need any help, then of course Birthrights will be here to help you.
If it's all right, I'll come in there, Chi, as well. I think every day maternity leaders are making really difficult decisions based on safety as to the birth choices they can offer women, and they want to be able to offer the whole lot, you know, everything, standalone, you know, home birth, whatever it might be. They want to be able to do that, but they make the decisions based on safety for all women at the time. So I think it's having those open and frank conversations. You know, keep the communication channels open. That's really important. On the day, decisions are really, you know, not appropriate, are they? But, you know, we can understand how things change quickly in services as well, given that it's a very unpredictable workload in maternity services. It's a bit like A&E, you know, you never know what's coming through the door. So I think try, you know, and have that communication. be supported by your midwife, make sure that she knows any anxiety levels that might be happening. We've sent out recent documents to support publications to support services about informed decision making, about care outside guidance, making sure people feel that they know the right way to understand the legal position, make sure that everyone is talking the same language, because that miscommunication is often what raises anxiety in women when they're coming, especially getting near to the end of pregnancy, and we don't want that. So I think absolutely, as Francesca said, the communication is really key.
Thank you. Thanks, Francesca. Thank you, Abbie. Another question that has come in. I mean, it's a question and it's a statement. So I'll read the statement first and then I'll ask the question. So thank you, Liz. I feel hopeless. This is thanks to all the wonderful suggestions and the work being done by the panel speakers. However, she feels that nothing can be done unless there's profound change in government funding, which is something that we've spoken about, attitude and investment in maternity services, with severe cutbacks in all areas of public and private funding and the cost of living crisis. She can't see this happening. Do you feel any different? Do you feel that there is hope?
I think you have to have hope. I think you have to believe that there has got to be change, but you have to do that to work together. And I think reports like the APPG report, your reports, all of these, these statistics, they're really strong, really to hit. But it's really always sad to hear the negative outcomes for women. But we need to work together to move that forward. And if we don't have that hope, then we might as well close the door, but we can't do that. We have to, believe and know that there's a wonderful birth experiences happening, but they're not everywhere. But we need to raise that standard so that it's this gold standard everywhere, and that's what we're all working for and hoping to move forward to. So we need to keep challenging the funding, and we need to be asking the question. We know in the autumn statement there was a statement about 2,000 more midwives, and we're not quite sure what was referred to in that, whether they were referring to the 2,000 gap or what. So we need some more detail about that. And we know the workforce planning was mentioned as well. So there was a mention of maternity services, even though quite small, but we need to get more detail about that and keep pressurising to make the changes happen in a meaningful way, as I've said before. But we have to have hope. I'm sorry, I'm always that person who has to look forward, I'm afraid.
I was going to, sorry, Francesca, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm with Abbie. I mean, we have to remain positive. We're, particularly for the people in this panel, we come to work every day to make change, and we are hopeful that it will happen because all of this evidence is coming to the fore, and there needs to be something. There needs to be something to change. Like things need to change now. Like there's just too much. There's just too much there. With regards to the Birthrights. Systemic racism, not broken bodies reports that Sandra spoke of, the response to our report there, particularly from key stakeholders in the maternity sector, so NHS England, etc., it's been overwhelming. There's been so much promise, good intention, and genuine desire to drive forward change, which is really, really positive. It's just about keeping on the stakeholders, keeping on, and of course the government, to so we can see action, not just words. So I'm a bit like Abbie. I may be one of the ones to sort of like look sort of towards and go, yeah, but we come to work every day to make change. We remain hopeful that will be the case.
Thank you. Jen, I think you wanted to step in. Excuse me.
I think, again, hopeful, always hopeful, otherwise none of us would come to work again. But I think there's two reasons to be hopeful. For me, one, at some point there's a critical mass that has to be achieved, that change will come. It has to. And I think this year it feels like so many reports, we've had so many experiences, maternity services, that it needs to change. And at some point that has to happen, even amongst everything else that's going on with government. But the other thing, I think, for me, coming back to the research we've done, is the many examples of where, despite the strain that professionals are under within the maternity system, they do continue to treat patients with kindness and respect, and they listen, and they are doing as much as they can. And it shows a real resilience amongst the workforce at the same time as the strain that they're under. And I think we have to come back to that as well. And there's a lot of very committed people within maternity services doing their very best, and with with that investment that we all know is desperately needed, real change will be seen.
And actually, Jen, that brings me to my next question. So very timely. Someone saw on social media that a mother who is, or a pregnant woman who is getting worried about having their baby, having seen all the concerns over maternity care in the media. How can we reassure them despite all these things that are happening? And I'm sure that resonates with some of our community listening today.
I think I'm going to have to reiterate, again, that we know, and your survey said the same, that there was good experience, that there are good experiences happening, and there are safe services out there. We need to make sure that all the services are safe to that standard, and we need to be listening to what is good, what does good look like. So moving forward, but for the immediate, for those women that are nervous, it comes down to speaking to your midwife, making sure you're raising your concerns and they can find the answers for you and support you through that, because there are hundreds of thousands of us. We know that happening every day in services across the country, and there's also on social media a lot of positives too, but sadly we're talking about that and we're not talking about that today. We need to find that communication is open all the time.
Thank you, Abbie. Francesca, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just building on what Abbie said. I mean, what I did think was quite positive in the report, although it's not 100%, 85% is quite a high figure, feeling of the respondents feeling like they were treated with kindness, compassion and respect in their care. And we know from our advice email service also helps healthcare professionals and birth workers who really want to put human rights at the centre of their care and just want help and support in knowing what that looks like. So and the vast majority of the healthcare profession, they come to work to do good and to help, and they'll be always doing their best for you. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to say, just to build on what Abbie said there.
And can I just add, I think this will be my final reflection. I know we have to go to that as well now.
Okay, thank you.
But it's about wherever you are in the country, in the UK, if it's your first time giving birth, second time, whatever, it's about being empowered. Empower yourself so you can have the conversations with the midwives, with the obstetrician, the anaesthetist that you need to have. Contact Birthrights, look at the NCT website, talk to your NCT practitioner, have some of the conversations that maybe the midwife might not have time for, but we can support you to be empowered to have more of those conversations and make the most of the time that you do have with the healthcare professionals that you come across.
Thank you, Jennifer. And yes, lead us right into final reflections. Is there anything before we wrap up this section of the AGM any of our panel would like to share with our community today, and any thoughts on what NCT should be doing next? But please, Sandra, I'll go to you first. What are your final thoughts from today?
Yeah, my final thoughts is that there are, so many reports that are highlighting the inequalities, are highlighting that there's so much more work to be done, but the work needs to not be just spoken about in, collective groups, but we need to start putting those, recommendations and the solutions into action. And I think one of the actions needs to be more education, and also training so that staff members, the workforce are equipped to, provide this high quality care that I keep speaking about. And high quality care also will include culturally competent care, so that every single mother, birthing person coming into contact with services are having their individual and personal needs met. I saw a question, what does the Motherhood group, what does my work do? What does my work involve? I'd say one of the most impactful areas of the work that I've been involved in is the training. And I think the training should be something that every provider, service, charity organization, even corporation that's engaging with mothers, birthing people as a whole needs to take part in. And so if you'd like to know more about that, you could also get in contact with me around, providing training around culturally competent care, diverse motherhood, and understanding individual and personalized needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And Abbie, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with us, or reflections?
Yes, and again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come to the panel and joining this really helpful discussion, because I think that's, as I keep saying through all my answers, isn't it? This communication between all of us, and that is what is going to make the difference going forward. I completely agree with Sandra, about the whole training, that investment in that. We need that seriously to be reinstated back into services, which has been completely disrupted during COVID, worse than before. We need that time and investment in that. And how that's provided is mainly around provision of time for people to be released from the frontline care, which is really key, which at the moment they can't be because of numbers. So we will keep promoting, supporting and implementing on behalf of maternity services to make them the best we can, and get the best for the members as well. And that is really what we're doing at the moment. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Abbie. Francesca?
First of all, thank you very much for having me today and having Birthrights today. It's been really great. And as I said, that I this time 3 years ago, I was booking my NCT course. So to be speaking here today has been brilliant. I just wanted to build on what Sandra said around education and awareness. So as I kept saying, one thing that we could do now to improve safety is to embed human rights at the centre of maternity care. So embedding that culture shift. So with education and awareness, so understanding the role of human rights in practice should not be an additional learning objective, but should be central to education and delivery of maternity care from the very beginning, because it will make a difference to the birth experiences and also outcomes for women and birthing people. At Birthrights, we do offer training to healthcare professionals and other birth workers. If you wanted to know a little bit more about that, there'll be more information on our website if you needed any assistance. But otherwise, it's about education and awareness at this stage before we wait for the additional investment and support from government.
Thank you so much, Francesca, and thank you so much to our panel for joining us today. We've covered so much in the past hour, and I know that our community are so grateful to having had you here. And I'm sure it's given us all a lot to think about, as well as a big appetite for action. Before we draw this part of the AGM to a close, I would like to invite Angela back to the panel to share some of her own personal reflections from the discussion we've just had. So please, Angela.
Thank you so much, Chi. And I want to join you and what I can see are members of our community saying a huge thank you to the panel. I think I'm probably not alone when I say that I'm experiencing this event with two key sentiments. I think at one level it's so stark and sad and moving, and is another punctuation in what has been a year of pretty hard-hitting reports in the maternity sector, whether that's reports from leading maternity organisations who I think, as Jen said, there's been a phenomenal kind of critical mass of insight generated this year and scrutiny, alongside the reports in Shrewsbury and in East Kent. And I think all of that, today's just another stark moment. But I have to say that I equally feel buoyed by the spirit of optimism that's here in the room, and the kind of relentless spirit for cooperation and dialogue and to make things better and to pursue change. And I guess I'd want to say that, I think NCT is very firmly in that space, like unrelentingly committed to campaigning for change, to listening to women, to seeking out insight, to building partnerships. And I hope that I can make that offer very explicitly to our partners and panel members and anyone else who's joining us in the audience. I particularly wanted to comment on the theme today around disparity and inequality, and to say to Sandra, I thought so much what you said was really powerful, and to confirm again very publicly that NCT has made a very public commitment to being an anti-racist organisation. We're on a long committed journey around work on equity and inclusion. On the theme of education, we now have a mandatory module for all of our incoming practitioners of the future to undertake learning in anti-discriminatory practice. And again, we remain very open to working with partners on how we would continue to embed that kind of cultural competence and cultural safety in our approach to our work in practice. I really was struck by the theme of the postnatal crisis. When I arrived at NCT in 2020, there was a lot of, I guess, positivity that the work on the Hidden Half campaign had led to such a significant result in terms of 6-week postnatal check for all new mums in England. Of course, that was within 8-10 weeks, we found ourselves in the first lockdown. So I think that we don't feel like our work on the Hidden Half is by any means finished. And I think I heard a real calling today for us to kind of pick up the baton and really ask ourselves how we can press for more. And I think I really liked Elizabeth's sense of like a complete end-to-end postnatal review. That felt really powerful. And then, as I say, just to say, I really welcomed Abbie's sense that we're going to have to think differently as a sector and as an ecosystem. NCT has an incredible community of educated, sensitive, compassionate birth workers, educators, practitioners, peer supporters. And I think that we would welcome the dialogue to be part of the solution at a time when, you know, the national workforce is under pressure. We've got phenomenal people in our workforce and in our community. And I think we would welcome the dialogue with the Royal Colleges and with other parts of the maternity sector to say, we stand ready to support. How could we best be valuable to women and families, and to provide perhaps some capacity and support to the workforce that is clearly so critical but under incredible pressure. So thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really powerful event, very motivating, and has established a great tone as we go into the second part of our AGM. Sandra, Francesca, Abbie, Jen, thanks so much for today. It's been terrific.
Thank you so much, Angela. And just a few final notes. NCT will continue its vital work to support parents as they navigate the system, throughout courses to help them prepare, through building strong, lasting networks of friendship, and through offering practical support when their babies arrive. We're also campaigning for change, and you'll hear more about our future plans in part 2 of this AGM, for those of you who are joining us for that part. So thank you again to our panel. It's been wonderful chairing this morning, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Members will be back again at 11:30, so see you then.